So when we talk about harassment, what typically comes to your mind? What is harassment? What sort of harassment usually happens at workplace? We've had some interesting things about not getting leave, overworked and underworked. What else happens typically at workplaces? Overtime, right? So is that sexual harassment?
Yes, that's mental, right?
That's mental. Okay. Then what would sexual harassment be then? Can mental harassment also be sexual harassment? So what happens, what is the difference between and asking someone to stay back late and also have dinner with them, or asking someone to stay back late, have dinner with them, and also spend the night with them? Is there a difference?
Well, it depends on the gender and sexual orientation of the two, of the boss and the employee. And if the boss is harassing, because you can have mental harassment or exploitation, let's say, without the sexual connotations. But you can also have the similar behavioral interaction, but with sexual connotations.
Sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual behavior. What do we understand when we say sexual behavior? Can anybody give me an example of a typical sexual behavior that happens? Is pinching somebody, is that sexual behavior?
Depends on where you pinch.
Depends on where you pinch. Good one. Okay.
Exactly.
So where would it be? Which part of the body would be sexual harassment? Pinching on the bottom would be what? I don't know. Is that sexual harassment?
That's cliched.
That's cliched.
Yeah.
Pinching on the bottom is cliched. Okay.
That's like
Direct. Okay. Otherwise?
physical proximity. The closer you get will give more signs of sexual, I guess.
What he's saying is the closer you are to an individual, that will give an indication of it being sexual.
Unnecessarily close.
How do you distinguish between unnecessarily close and necessarily close? If you're working together in a lab, if you're working together on the same computer,
Before and after you should, if he's over a period of time gets closer and closer, so maybe that is a sign of, him being sexually interested.
so you should wait for how long to gauge whether this individual is sexually interested in you? How long should one wait to gauge? And how close is too close? How does one gauge that? So, sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual behavior. It is of four kinds. Okay, verbal, non-verbal, visual, and physical. So what he described is a physical form of sexual harassment. There is no touching, but you have invaded another individual's personal space. Has anybody heard of stalking? Yeah. So stalking would also be a physical form of sexual harassment. You are not touching anybody, but you're following somebody, you are invading someone's personal space. What about for a job well done, patting on the back? Would that be sexual harassment?
It depends on how you're...
Oh, it depends on who's patting us on the back.
How you're patting, I guess.
How you're patting? How should one pat?
A normal pat would be something like this.
That's okay, that's allowed.
Yeah.
And what is not allowed?
The extension of the things, like when you pat and you start rubbing a person, and that's like...
Okay, so when you're appreciating somebody, if you're patting and rubbing, then that would be sexual harassment. But if you're just patting someone on the back for a job well done, that is appreciation. Or does it matter on who's patting you on the back?
Maybe if it's out of character, if he's not a patter, but if he starts patting.
Okay, so he's not a patter, but he starts patting us on the back.
Yeah, but what if he doesn't usually pat people and he starts patting,
Because you've done exceptionally well all of a sudden. In school, I'm sure it's happening, no? Your teachers must be patting you on the back, patting you on the head. Do you like it? Or do you feel like really good that they patted me on my back? That I've done really well? Patting on the back can also be sexual harassment when it's in the workplace. How should one actually ideally appreciate someone for good work in a workplace?
Letter of encouragement.
Letter of encouragement at a staff meeting, you make that person stand up, everybody clap. Why pat? So the understanding of patting on the back, of job well done. Today it's a pat on the back. Tomorrow it could be a pat and a stroke. Day after it could be something else altogether. So patting is also under the definition of the law. Okay, this is not my definition. Patting on the back also is sexual harassment at workplace of the physical form. Verbal, what would verbal be?
Abuses.
Abuses, okay. What sort of abuses? Tone, okay. What kind of tone? Can we have some examples? Because this kind of conversation, this kind of space to have a discussion, rarely one gets, right? So when we say, okay, the tone of a voice, what tone is it that is really sexual harassment? And how is one to determine that that tone is sexual harassment, but that tone is not sexual harassment? Or that tone said by this individual could not be because he's actually a very senior guy. Or that tone is not because he's my friend. So what kind of tone is okay for us to think about? Who is determining then? Who is going to determine which tone is okay and which tone is not okay? Who is going to determine whether the patting on the back is okay or not okay? It's verbal. There's something also called as non-verbal form of sexual harassment. Before that, whistling. What is whistling? That's a verbal form of sexual harassment. Non-verbal would be?
Gestures.
Yeah, without speaking. What sort of gestures?
Like some rude gestures.
Rude gestures would be?
Touching.
Staring.
Staring?
Winking.
Winking. Is there a difference between staring and looking? Can looking be sexual harassment?
It's done for unnecessarily long period
That is staring.
staring, yeah.
What about looking? Can looking be sexual harassment?
Depends where you look.
Depends on where you look and how you look. So I'm just looking at you, but I've got like, oh, okay, I've checked you out in 1 second. So how you look, where you look. Staring, can that also not be sexual harassment? I'm just looking to see, you look so familiar. I've seen you somewhere before. When something like that happens, then it's not sexual harassment. So I'm just looking at you and I say, what you're staring at? I'm just looking to see the familiarity. My God, you look just like my mom. Is that sexual harassment?
No, I
What do you think? No?
It's a mistaken identity, I think, could be.
It's a mistaken identity. Okay. So again, who's gauging whether it was a mistaken identity or not? Why did she snap her fingers? And why did she ask, why are you staring?
She's feeling uncomfortable.
She's feeling uncomfortable. Otherwise, she wouldn't have snapped her fingers and said, hey, or she'll just get up. She's making it known that I'm not comfortable with it. What else can there be non-verbal? What kind of gestures did you say?
Holding hand.
Holding hands, is that non-verbal? That would be physical. Gestures, the middle finger, showing someone the middle finger. Or maybe, giving those come behind the pillar. These are all gestures. You're not saying anything. This is all non-verbal. There is also something called visual form of sexual harassment. And what would that be?
Staring.
Staring is not visual. Staring is non-verbal.
Sending explicit material.
Yes. Sending messages, sending WhatsApp. Nowadays we have this thing of having WhatsApp groups. The entire office, the entire department, everybody who you meet becomes a group, right? Sometimes you forget who's actually in the group. And you start sending these messages. This morning someone showed me a message and she said, is this sexual harassment? I said yes. So it came in a WhatsApp group. So sending messages, jokes, MMS, emails, okay, with sexual content, showing someone something. That is sexual harassment at workplace of the visual form. If I don't work on health, if I have nothing to do with health, I've got condoms lying on my table all the time. I've got women employees all around me, women colleagues all around me. Can that be sexual harassment? So if a condom is lying on your table and you don't have anything to do with health and you kind of prominently displayed it, it can also be construed as sexual harassment at workplace. There are two types of sexual harassment that typically happens in the workplace. One is a quid pro quo situation. A quid pro quo situation is a this for that, or in exchange for sexual favor. So in exchange for a sexual favor, or if you're quiet when someone is patting you on the back, okay, then you would maybe get extra leaves, get a promotion, or maybe, you would get some travel abroad. If you get any impact on your work for any sexual favor, that is quid pro quo situation, right? Casting couch is a typical quid pro quo situation. What if I accept the offer and have taken the promotion? Would that still be sexual harassment?
Yeah.
When?
Because the alternatives are worse.
I've taken the offer and I'm quite happy. I've got my promotion. I've got my second promotion. Would that still be sexual harassment?
It does, I guess. Because it doesn't stop at that point. Maybe this gets aggravated to other things in time. And I think we'll be done with those things also. And we don't want any such things anymore.
But you've taken it. When it was time to take the offer, so you did it.
But you always have the privilege to stop it whenever you want, right?
The system is not going to protect you. They know it.
Okay.
I mean, that's reality.
Okay. The moment that offer was made became sexual harassment. Or the moment that situation was created. Usually a quid pro quo situation doesn't come directly because we have the law, because we have so many laws. No one's going to tell you directly, sleep with me and you'll get a promotion. It's never going to happen like that. A situation is going to be created in which you have to comply at certain point of time. It might be a sexual favor for me. It could be a sexual favor for my friend. It could be a sexual favor for, my son. It could be for anybody. But when I've created a situation where I have to comply, that is a quid pro quo form of sexual harassment. There is another one which is called a hostile work environment. A hostile work environment is one in which there is a quid pro quo happening, or where verbal, non-verbal, visual or physical form of sexual harassment is also there in the workplace. You know about it. That is a hostile work environment. So in this, interestingly, the sexual harassment can be happening with two other people. But since I am in that environment and I'm witnessing it, I am being sexually harassed. So I will file a complaint that I have been sexually harassed because I am in a hostile work environment. Not that I am seeing someone else being sexually harassed. So I can also file. When the refusal or the acceptance of any of these sexual favors has a direct impact on our work, it is called sexual harassment at workplace. And why do we have a law on sexual harassment at workplace? Okay, someone pinches your bottom outside on the road. What do? Sometimes you fight back, sometimes you go and report it. Can you imagine the person who's pinching your bottom on the road is also sitting next to you in your office, day in and day out? How many hours do you spend at the workplace? More than you spend at home. Which is why we have a law on sexual harassment at workplace. And interestingly, also the law says that if there has to be an orientation, a gender orientation, because sexual harassment is contextualized in the context of gender. It is a gender challenge of the workplace. Sexual harassment is to do with attitudes. It's to do with power and control. What sort of power? Power of hierarchy. But also, there are many cases of a junior man sexually harassing a senior female. Then what kind of power is that? It's the power of being a man. Just the power of being a man. Because I'm a man, I can do what I want to. It doesn't matter how senior you are. You've all heard of the Aruna Shanbhag case. It was a ward boy who raped the head nurse because she had reprimanded him. So it was just the power of a man. How dare you? How dare you? So sexual harassment is about controlling.